Hello, hello. Are we live? Alright, let me hop over to YouTube and check it out. Make sure everything looks good. And then we'll wait a minute and see if anybody shows up. Alrighty. That's all set up. What a day, what a day. Don't know why that looks like that, but I guess that will do. Hello, handsome Ratch. Welcome to the stream. I guess I can go ahead and get started. Hello, Lob Selvith. Seeing some of the familiar faces here. So I'm just going to do another question and answer stream like we did last week. I've decided this is going to replace my blogs because it's basically the same thing, except I was having the questions come in early on the blogs and then just answering that. Well, why don't I just answer questions as they come? But also to give it a little bit of structure, I'm going to also have a theme for each episode, so if nobody has any questions or nobody shows up, I have something I can talk about. Hello, everyone that's pouring in. I'm a little down today for a really dumb reason. My childhood home is on sale again, and my mom and I just found out, and we're looking on the website to look at pictures, and they've changed. They've made some ugly changes, but I lived there for 19 years, and it's just weird to see such a staple of my childhood so completely, irrevocably changed and so out of my control. Like, just, it was emotional, and so I decided I needed a distraction, and here we are. So this week's theme is going to be book recommendations. Most of what I have is fiction. I have, I think, one or two things that people have asked, like what books I use for my research, that I may share. I have one manga, I think. But feel free to ask any questions you want. I mean, this is a Q&A questions for you. The stuff I'm talking about is just to kind of, fill the air. So I will take breaks and answers people's questions on any subject. Doesn't have to be books, but we will start off with talking about books. So let me pull these over. All right. So some of these I've talked about before in blogs, I'm sure, because I know in my first episode I mentioned a lot of stuff that I just really like. Thank you, Charles, for letting me know you enjoyed Waiting for You. Speaking of books, I'm really excited about how that turned out, and I've had a lot of feedback so far that's been very positive, which has been nice. Of course, there's still stuff looking back now that I've done it and I know how it works. I'm like, I could have printed that differently or done this, but, that happens, and there will be more books in the future, I hope. So we've got our first question. Handsome Ratch wants to know favorite author. That's a really hard thing because I just enjoy so many different works and so many different pieces of fiction, and it's hard to say a favorite author. You'll have to give me time to think on that one. I'll come back to that because I definitely have people who I've read a lot of their works and have definitely influenced me. Maybe they're not my favorite anymore. Anne Rice would be one of those because that was her works were a huge influence on my childhood. I have the first 12 books of the vampire series, and then I grew up and learned what a crazy old woman she is and how nuts she is. But I still recently read one of the books she put out. She put out a sequel to The Mummy, and it was amazing. I'm like, how is... Lord, you're a crazy woman, but I love your work. So that's one that I have I feel like has definitely influenced me, but maybe I wouldn't call my favorite. It's hard to call her my favorite, but definitely influential. I've been reading the Rick Riordan books, which is, if you may know better, Percy Jackson series. Do not judge the books by the movies, because the books are so much better, and they just get better and better. They are sort of Harry Potter-esque. They get compared to that a lot, but in a much more sort of, I would almost say realistic way. To me, the children in the Percy Jackson series are a lot more like real kids, which maybe that's because the author... I always forget to turn off my phone. It might be because the author's American, so I'm identifying with these kids as Americans rather than them being British. I don't know, but it's a very good series. And some of my favorite authors are in this stack, so I may as well start talking about those. I do not know Clive Barker. The name's kind of familiar, but I've never read anything. Favorite comics? Definitely the Transformers IDW series. The Wicked and the Divine saga. Let's see what I got over there. Monstrous is probably my favorite right now. That's a really good series. Do I think the Resident Evil film series needs a reboot? I mean, sure, if they want to. I'm probably still not going to watch them. So, I mean, if they put out a good one, I'll watch it. But, you know, they kind of ran that into the ground, didn't they? Anyway, my first book I have here is 12 Kings in Sharukh. I don't know how well the camera got that until it comes up on the stream, which is, of course, delayed. But 12 Kings in Sharukh, didn't really get it. Okay. Is by Bradley P. Balow. I think I'm saying that right. And it's the first book in a trilogy, and also has a prequel, and it's so good. It's hard to explain. It's a fantasy universe set in a sort of desert locale, and the main character is a woman. She's a warrior. Basically, she lives on the street, and she makes her livelihood fighting in arenas and doing that kind of thing. And her quest is to avenge her mother's death. And her mother was murdered for reasons she doesn't know, got involved in some kind of political conspiracy, and there's a lot of really interesting sort of emotional and political intrigue in the story as this woman goes about trying to find out what happened to her mom. And she's such a great character, and I love stories with main female characters, especially like action fantasy stuff. She's definitely my favorite kind of protagonist. I really like sort of the gruff warrior woman. Like, think Logan from Wolverine, but a lady. That's my favorite type of character. Let's see. Have I ever watched The Room? I haven't. I know The Room. I know of The Room. I've never watched The Room. I don't know if I could make myself watch The Room. I don't know that I could do that to myself, but I have definitely heard of it. Oof. Oh, man. Let's see here. All right, the next one. Let me see if I can get this in the camera better. The Tale of Medjai Dracula, which is by Hideyuki Kikuchi, who also wrote Vampire Hunter D, which is his more famous work. Technically, this is called Dark Wars, The Tale of Medjai Dracula, but Dark Wars sounds so cheesy. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's a Medjai-era story set in Japan, you know, the end of the samurai era. The Rurouni Kenshin period is what I think of it as a lot. And Dracula shows up. It's sort of a it's not really like if Dracula happened in Japan. It's more like what if Dracula went to Japan. And it's really interesting. And it's fun. It's pretty short. And it doesn't do, like, it's not a huge, sweet, like, don't go into it thinking there's going to be this huge emotional plot. Like, it's just an interesting concept. And it has a very, like, the ending makes it's very cool. Oh, man. I might like the book called The Hunger about vampires. I will have to check that out. I love vampire fiction so much. On that note, why don't I pick up Blood Price by Tanja Huff. This is the first of a, 5 books. It was adapted into what I've heard is a bad TV series. Basically, the main female character is a policewoman who has a visual impairment. She's starting to lose her eyesight. I can't remember why. I think it was just, it just happens. And through circumstance ends up meeting a man who turns out to be a vampire. And they kind of end up meshing together perfectly as sort of a detective duo. And of course, there's the will they, won't they kind of romantic aspect, and a lot of really interesting sort of monster lore gets explored in the various books. Each one kind of has a theme. Like, I think one's werewolves, one's mummies, one's ghosts, and they get really good. Like, the relationship stuff's really good. And there's also another series that focuses on a side character in the book who is gay. There's a trilogy of books about him, and I haven't read those yet. But they're very good, and Tanja Huff, she writes a lot of great fiction, but this is what I've read the most of hers. Are vampires your favorite monster, or is there a monster you like even more? I just realized I skipped a couple questions I will have to jump back to. It just popped up first because the name was green. Which, I guess I should do that, because that means that you're a member on my channel, Handsome Ratch, and thank you. I will give you special praise. Thank you, Handsome Ratch. My favorite monster is a paradigm that the vampire matches. I really like the predator, the monster that is both threatening and alluring. I just recently watched a series you may have heard of called Stargate Atlantis. I had never seen it. We were babysitting and it happened to come on TV. We were watching a baby. So she was not watching this. She was not seeing this. And the monster in that show was a creature that was an alien that fed on people. And I was immediately like, ooh, I like this creature. Like, there's something about the dynamic of a creature that inherently is designed to destroy you, and then playing with the relationships of that, and how the trust that can exist when you care about someone that could inherently destroy you, the trust that has to exist there, and it's a very interesting dynamic. So I like the predator creature, and the vampire is very much one of those. Let's jump back to... Yes, I have seen a couple people mention Vampire the Masquerade. I do own it, and I will be playing it, especially now that the sequel's coming out. I'll probably stream it closer to the time of the sequel so that it's fresh in my mind when the next one comes out. Do you know about Batwoman? I know a little. I've read a couple. I think at one point she was dating the female Question that took over for the other one. Because I followed the Question comics for a little bit because I really liked that character. I don't know her well, but I liked her in what I saw. I never read a lot of DC comics. I watched the Justice League cartoons. But I will definitely have to check out the CW series. That is going to be cool. I've never read any books by Jackie Collins, but I will have to write that name down as well as the other ones I've seen here and check those out. Only Lovers Left Alive. Excuse me. I think, isn't that the movie? I remember seeing the guy that played Loki and the girl that was the evil angel in Constantine. Can't believe that's the pull my brain is giving me. But I wanted kind of to see that. I wasn't sure if it was going to be good or not, but it looked intriguing. So I will have to check that out. Have you ever thought about audio role play? Do you mean like... I don't know. You're going to have to describe what audio roleplay is. My mind goes to like a D&D podcast is what I'm thinking. So you'll have to explain what you mean by that. Have I read any books by Murakami? I wonder if that's who... One second. Where'd it go? Nope, it's not that one. I just picked up a new Japanese horror novel, and I wasn't sure who wrote it, so I wanted to check, and that's not the name. So I have not read any work by that person. But again, I'll have to go through and write all these names down. I did watch Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. That was a very big part of my childhood growing up. I would say that's one of the cartoons I watched the most religiously, where I actually saw it all from beginning to end. And it was a really well-written cartoon. A lot of really great writers wrote episodes for that series. It was a really great... If you've never seen it, I would recommend going and trying to find it and watching it. Yeah, I also see... I think Akatsuki Leader mentioned Vampire the Masquerade's also a board game. I kind of had heard there was one. I didn't realize it came first. I will definitely have to look that up. because I freaking love board games. I need to get back into playing more of them. We just played Zelda Clue, which was really fun. I need to get my freaking friends over here more often. I have read books by Stephen King. He's not my favorite. I don't know. I feel like he kind of... I don't know. He's kind of played. Like, his work gets a little dull. I probably judge him a little harshly just because he is so popular, but the only book of his that's really ever grabbed me was Carrie. And I tried Dark Tower, I tried some of the other stuff, and it just never really got to me as much. Alright, let me jump back up here. I'm new to your channel. As a Silent Hill fan, which videos of yours should I start with? Ooh, boy. Welcome to the channel. Glad you could join us. Definitely the Silent Hill symbolism videos. I'm tempted to tell you not to jump all the way back to the beginning, but I still hear from people time and again that my first 2 videos mean the most to them. So even though I feel like they're not my best work, and they're literally almost a decade old now, start at the beginning of Silent Hill symbolism and just go from there. Just probably recognize there's a lot with some audio glitches, there's a lot with some visual problems, there's a lot of information that I feel like I changed my opinions on or I learned more about. But I mean, that's what, you know, writing and talking about symbolism and storytelling and this kind of stuff is, learning and educating yourself and changing your opinion over time, or else, you know, you're just going to stagnate. So yeah, definitely do that. And I have a couple of streams of a few different Silent Hill games. Let's Play or 2. Those are also ancient. You can find those in all my playlists and stuff. But yeah, welcome to the channel. All right, let me see where I was here on this list. Trying not to miss anything. Audio roleplay. You would be a good voice actor for a mind visual story. You have a good voice. I have heard that a lot from a lot of people, which is interesting to me. That's the reason I did the audiobook version of Waiting for You, which I'm still freaking recording because it's so killer on my voice. I think I'm on chapter 17 and I need to finish that. Yeah, it's interesting that I've heard, since starting up all this stuff on this channel, I've heard so much about people enjoying my voice, which, I don't know, to me it's just my voice, but I don't know, I could probably do something like that. I've always wanted to do more podcasting, and my schedule just makes it very hard. I'm still trying to put out the podcast for the members, but I'd like one day to do something like a podcast story, like something like a D&D, like Critical Role or Adventure Zone. That would be really fun. We actually did a D&D Silent Hill game my friends and I did once, and I've wanted to do it again ever since and actually record it for this channel because it turned out really cool and it was just a really fun game. Whew, let me get some water. All right, let's jump down here. Have you played Beyond Good and Evil? It has an excellent female protagonist. I've played it, but I never finished it. It's one of those games that I had growing up that I just, you know, I was very ADD, very distracted, and sometimes I just wouldn't finish a game and end up, you know, moving on with my life. But I have heard a lot of good things about it, and I will probably finish it someday. Whoop. What is my opinion on Silent Hill comic books? Another one I hear quite a lot. They're good and they're bad. There's some good ones, there's some bad ones. I've read most of them, and I probably will make a video at some point just because it's been asked about so much. I just need to... The part that's going to suck about that is I'm going to have to scan and upload a bunch of images from those comics just so I have footage for the video, and that's going to be a headache. Gandalf is trying to figure out how to get over here. Come on, buddy. Trying to cross the mountain of books. Come here, sweetie. Come on. Come say hello. You're nervous. Yes, hello. You're fine. Come here. Say hello. Can you say hello? Yeah? Say hi. Here, purr into the mic. Say, no, I don't want to do that. All right. make sure I didn't miss anything. Ever read An Artist of the Floating World? I've never heard of it. I will have to check that out. Y'all are giving me some good recommendations I'm going to have to look up. Alright, so let's see. We did those. Let's jump over here. I want to share this one because it's just delightful to me. It's In the Blood by Lauren Wright Douglas. This is kind of an old pulpy lesbian novel. 1989 is when this came out. And so this story, if I remember exactly correctly, there is a plague or some kind of apocalyptic event, a virus of some sort, that only affects people that have heterosexual sex. So this is basically the writer's excuse to be able to write a fictional world in which only lesbians exist. And then from there, it's a sort of sci-fi dystopian love story that really was very interesting. And I just loved the concept of how this universe was set up, because they further explored it with, there were straight women who lived in convents to keep themselves safe. There were roving motorbike gangs of infected men. I mean, it was fascinating. And it was only in America. For some reason, this virus did not affect the rest of the world. So outside of this lesbian apocalypse in America, there was another society living out there. And it was really cool. And definitely sort of a you know, pulp fiction lesbian novel kind of thing, you know, the kind of thing you go to romance shelf and pick up, and you know it's going to be kind of weird and corny, but that's what it's supposed to be. Let's see, which Silent Hill comic books did I like? Oh Lord, if I can remember the name. There is one that deals with a family that, I believe 2 sisters, and one of the sisters comes back to the town and kind of has powers, but the focus of it is the town tries to use social media to become famous online and get more people to come to the town. It tries to trick these teenagers into coming to the town and recording footage so they could then put it basically on their YouTube channel and bring people to the town. And I just love that concept so much, and I wish we would have had an actual video game explore that concept, because it's so fascinating and a really cool way to explore how Silent Hill would expand in the modern day. And even though I think sometimes the comics go in a direction I wouldn't have taken them, I really like some of the ideas that they play with. There's a few comics that are literal garbage, but I really remember that one sticking out in my mind. And I do also really like the Downpour one about Anne. That one was very cool, too. Have I read Conan Saga or Savage Sword of Conan? I have not. Is that anything like Conan the Barbarian? That's all I know of it is the Conan Exiles game. That's the only thing I know about it. All right, let's see here. The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue. I know I've mentioned this one before because it's one of my favorites. It literally made me cry. It's a story set in the, 18th century Europe? And the idea is the main character is a noble's son. He's going on his last vacation, his tour of Europe before he has to settle down and be normal. And his friend and his sister end up going with him. And they all are kind of chafing against society because the main character is gay, his friend is biracial, his sister is a girl who doesn't want to go to finishing school, she wants to be a doctor. And so it's dealing with their relationships and how they're dealing with growing up in this very specific time period that doesn't want them to be who they are. And it's a story about family, and it was just really emotional. And there was a moment later in the story that really made me tear up when one of the main characters was sort of coming to terms with his family. It was really great. And there's a sequel about the sister that I haven't read yet, but I really like the author. It's Mackenzie Lee. It's a very good story. And it's also a gay love story between 2 of the main characters. Do you have favorite classics you go back to? Definitely Dracula. Honestly, when it comes to classic literature, I tend to go back and read poetry more than I do fiction. I read a lot of Victorian and Romantic period poetry. A lot of Keats, Wordsworth, Dorothy Wordsworth, the Grasmere Journals, a lot of that time period. Byron, Shelley. I just really enjoy sort of the mindset of that time. They were all very hopeful and wanting to enact social and emotional change in others and in themselves. And even though it never really got to go where they wanted it to go, you could just tell in their writing there was a lot of soul and heart in it. Let's see. What's your opinion on the new Sonic movie coming out? Oh boy. They have one toy in this room that's really loud. One toy. And they never play with it until I turn my mic on. You never play with that thing. Seriously. The Sonic movie is really ugly. And the problem is the proportions. If you compare it, and I almost did a video on this until they came out and said they were going to change everything, and I was like, well, what's the point? They're already just going to change the film. If you look at the Detective Pikachu movie, you know, whether or not you think it's creepy or what, I've heard people on both sides. Pikachu's proportions are the same. His eyes are the same size as they were in the anime. His ears compared to his body are the same. You can't say that about Sonic. His arms and his leg to torso proportions are different. His eyes proportion to his head are different. Because they've changed the proportions, he looks wonky and he doesn't look right because they just don't match anymore. Like, make him look as weird and realistic as you want, but unless the proportions match, he's not gonna look right. And I'm glad it's being changed, but at the same time, I have a feeling that they're gonna really use and abuse their artistic team to get this done without postponing the time the movie comes out. Unless they postpone it, I don't know how they're gonna get this done in 6 months. I don't know. Whew. Have I seen the Super Mario Bros. Movie? I have not. I've heard things. I've not seen it. Oh, man. All right, let's see. Sunshine by Robin McKinley. Another one I know I've mentioned. This is one of my favorite vampire novels. It's like a post-apocalyptic one. It's a universe where the vampires and the humans warred at one point, and now they're in a kind of tense peace. And the vampires of this universe are kind of very different, the way the writer describes them. But the story starts with the main character, a young woman, has been captured by vampires, and she ends up imprisoned in a sort of a cell with another vampire. They're trying to torture this vampire by having, you know, him chained up near her, and basically the two of them have ended up in this situation where they have to rely on each other to survive. And so she and this vampire are having to learn to trust and work together, even though he is a predator and a monster and she is the possible victim. And it's very interesting and very well written. I highly recommend it. Please recommend Hellsing as well. Of course, I love Hellsing. I still have my original series bought the day they came out every time. I was so into that series. Oh, it's still my favorite version of Dracula ever. Even beyond, like, it just, to me, that's the canon sequel. Is Dracula, Hellsing. It's a very good series. What's your favorite stalker from Haunting Ground? Definitely the creepy lady. For sure. Because the third guy, there was a guy that just kind of had a gun. Granted, I did not finish the game. I haven't beaten it. The first guy was kind of tragic, but really the second, the woman was so creepy. Yes, Daniela. She was just so creepy. The whole game was pretty creepy, but she was definitely... Okay, Charles Smith is over here quoting Castlevania, and I will give you that. That is also a very good Dracula, but Hellsing's just my favorite. I did not grow up playing Castlevania. I did not get into it until very recently. I bought my first Castlevania game like 2 weeks ago, so I'm biased towards Hellsing. Oh no, oh no! Do you mean the Hugh Jackman Van Helsing movie? No! 1 second! Here we go. I mean the manga Helsing by Kota Hirano, one of my favorite manga of all time. I still have little sticker notes in here from when I was taking notes on it, thinking I was going to write up a book on it. I never got around to finishing it. Maybe one day. It's set in England and about this family of vampire and monster hunters who have in their employ a vampire themselves, who is like the most powerful of vampires that's ever vampired. And it ends up being a story, on the surface level, it's about a war. But it's really about what it means to be alive and what it means to be human. And it's a very well written story. Let's see here. Do I have the complete series and the prequel? I do not have the prequel. I don't know that it ever came to the United States because I've never seen it on sale. I do have the whole original series, and I have all of the Blu-ray, DVD, movies. Let's see. Which Castlevania game did I get? There's a 2-for-1 on the PS4 store that just came out recently, and it was on sale, and I grabbed it. I don't remember which ones it was, but it was the popular ones. That's what I remember. Alright. Do I like the Hugh Jackman Van Helsing movie? It's fun. I enjoyed it. I mean, it's not gonna win any awards or anything, but it's fun. And sometimes that's all you want from a movie. Yes, those were the games. Rondo of Blood and Symphony of the Night. Those are the ones I got. Alright. I'm gonna talk about this series since we just finished talking about a manga. It's called Ten Dance. I just recently got into it, and not only... Let me show you this one. The art is just gorgeous. It's also a gay love story. That's actually written like, not like yaoi, but like a story. And it's about two professional dancers. One is a ballroom dancer, one is a salsa dancer. And they want to perform in this competition that requires you to be a master of both. And so they decide they're going to learn how to dance from each other. And it's about them learning more about each other and their relationship through the world of dancing and their profession and teaching each other, not just about dancing, but about themselves. And it's very good. Oh, man. One sec. My dog is freaking out, and I'm gonna go see why she's not calming down. My dog will not leave the cats alone. Have I ever watched Thelma? I have not. I don't know that I know what that is. Let's see here. What do we want to talk about? Let's go to some nonfiction. The Monsters by, let's see here, Dorothy and Thomas Hubler. This is the story of Mary Shelley, who wrote Frankenstein. It goes into a lot of detail about the lives of the people she was surrounded by. Her mother, who was very famous, Mary Wollstonecraft Godwin. Her father, what was his name? Something Godwin. Her husband, who was a poet named Percy Shelley. They were friends of Lord Byron. Just a lot of the relationships in her life and how they affected her life and how they affected Frankenstein. And it's a really fascinating look at their lives and at a very fascinating period of time. I really, really love this book. And it's just, if you like learning about literature and history and personal relationships, or if you're a fan of Frankenstein, it's a very good book. Why did they start naming Castlevania games after musical forms? I have no idea, seeing as I've never played one. Because it sounded cool? I don't know. Alright. The Cutting Season by Attica Locke. It's been literal years since I've read this one. I picked it up because it was a murder mystery in the South, and it sounded like it was up my alley. Basically, this young woman heads back to a southern plantation that's kind of been turned into a historical location. She is a young black woman, and it kind of ties together modern issues with race and gender back to this historical time far in the past, at the same time that she's finding out about this murder that's happened recently that might be because of events of the past. So it's an interesting kind of, how does the past affect the future? Murder, mystery, intrigue, romance. It's very, very cool. I really enjoyed that book. It's from 2000. What also has a lesbian protagonist? Does this book have a lesbian protagonist? I feel like I would remember that. Granted, I have not read this book since high school? Maybe? It's been a while, but I remember really enjoying it. And if it has a lesbian protagonist, more to it. Oh no, you're talking about Thelma. I was like, I think I would remember. I will have to look that up then. Alright, let's see here. Alright. The Devil You Know by Mike Carey. If you've ever read comics, Mike Carey wrote the Lucifer Comics series, which was based off of Neil Gaiman's Sandman. He writes a couple different things. He wrote The Girl with All the Gifts, and The Devil You Know is the first book in the Felix Castor series. It is a story about demons and monsters and that kind of thing. He is an exorcist, and in this story, if I remember correctly, he's hired to exorcise a ghost out of a museum. And so he's solving this mystery of why this ghost is here and all that. And the main character has a lot of spirit and spunk. And it's just a lot of fun to read. The writer is very talented. And I like his characters. I like his universe building. The story ends in a really neat way. And I'm very excited to read the next one. And it's very good. There's like at least 5 books, I think. And of course, since it's about like ghosts and demons and stuff, and I very much enjoy that. And Mike Carey is a good writer. Lucifer was amazing. It's one of my favorite comics of all time. I own most of the series. Neil Gaiman's Sandman was also very good if you haven't read that. But if you liked that stuff, definitely try out Mike Carey's books. Here's another really cool nonfiction book. Old Ways, Old Secrets. It is a history, a very sort of light history of pagan tradition in Ireland. It doesn't dive deep into it, but it explores sort of various facets of it. Like, this is kind of an overview of the Druids. This is an overview of holy places. This is an overview of these gods and goddesses. And it's just a very interesting way to skim over a very long and heavy tradition of magic and paganism in Ireland. And it's very interesting because Ireland is a unique place. It's one of the only places in Europe that wasn't touched so heavily by Rome. It wasn't conquered. It's one of the only places that didn't have a heavy amount of witch burning, because the culture there was very different. And so its pagan traditions and the Celtic history was preserved there in a very different way, whereas in most of the rest of Europe, Celtic tradition was sort of destroyed. So it was a very interesting look in a very easy to read way. It's not a very heavy, research tome. It's written in a very readable way, and I highly recommend it. Bye! Thanks for checking out the video, and maybe join us later. I might try streaming tonight, knock on wood. We'll see how that goes. Alright. Dragon Princess by S. Andrew Swan. This one's really fun, and it's the start of a series. So basically 3 characters get into a spell by mistake. If I remember correctly, a thief goes into this cave and is trying to, I think he's there to steal, but he happens to walk in on a wizard and a dragon and a princess, and there's this scenario going on where the princess has been kidnapped and all this, and the wizard is trying to catch this spell. He's trying to catch this spell and accidentally switches everyone's bodies. So now the princess is in the dragon's body, and the thief is in the princess's body. And so the princess and the dragon, the thief and the dragon, who is a princess, team up to try and get their bodies back and get this wizard and fix everything. And it's so fun and so irreverent and very, very cool. Akatsuki's being mean to me in the chat again, so I'm gonna have to find a way to punish you, Akatsuki. You're always mean to me in the chat, and I don't appreciate it. Don't laugh at me, Lobsovith. Let's see. Ooh, From Here to Eternity. I will have to check that out. That sounds very interesting. Let's see here. Look, I do a lot of work and research, and sometimes at the end of the day, I feel like chilling playing video games, and sometimes I fall asleep. So, be nice to me. I was actually supposed to go out and do some things today, but I was waiting on Mars to do it with me, and Mars slept until 5 p.m., so that didn't happen. So, oh well, I didn't get a lot done today. Mean, snarky, same thing. Alright, so this is Sherrilyn Kenyon's Fantasy Lover, which is the first in a long series called The Dark Hunters. It's a romance novel, and it's exactly like what it looks like on the cover, but at the heart of this very cheesily written romance novel series is a universe and world building that rivals any fantasy novel I've ever read. And you can tell the author has these characters in this universe she's built that she wants to share, but to sell it, she's wreathed it in these, like, goofy, steamy sex stories. And even then, the romances she writes are actually very good. The sex scenes are as awkward as they're always going to be, because they're always written like, he put her thing into the thing, and then they did the thing. But the actual characters and relationships are very well written, and the universe gets so good. She's on to, like, book 40, and the covers have actually changed from romance to covers to more traditional sci-fi fantasy covers, because I think her publisher has realized that's who's buying her books, because the universe is just very, very good. And it's all based on Greek and Roman mythology. The characters are vampires, sort of. It's her take on vampirism and monsters and mythology, all the kinds of things I really enjoy, but it's also very snarky and fun. So I highly recommend it. The early books are tough to get through, but by the time you get to book 3, I mean, there's a main character who is run over by a float in Mardi Gras because the god Bacchus is mad at him. So he gets run over by a Mardi Gras float, and it's great. It's really funny and lighthearted and fun. I highly recommend this series. One of my favorite authors of all time. Alright. Let's see. I don't think I've talked about this one before. This is the Alleluia Files by Sharon Shin. It's one book in a series of 5. I think it's called the Samaria series. It's her sort of a post-apocalyptic, I've said that word so many times tonight, fantasy story about angels. And it's kind of got a sort of Anne McCaffrey kind of way, where it's a fantasy story, but really it's kind of more of a technology story, like sci-fi. There's fantasy characters, but they exist for scientific reasons. And in each book is usually it's a love story between a female character and one of these angels. And it's got a lot of religious overtones and stuff, but it's not actually about, like, God. And I really enjoyed once again, sort of the mythology and religious aspect, and also the world building, which was very, very cool. What's a book you really want to recommend, but is also kind of awkward to recommend for whatever reason? Well, I feel like I just recommended one. I don't know. Honestly, I don't read a lot of things that I'm like, oh no, I never want to let anybody know I read that. Because I feel like a lot of, if I read it, I find value in it, and I wouldn't be ashamed of it. I'm having a hard time thinking of something. Honestly, I don't think there's something I would really be ashamed of. I definitely think that the one that comes closest is the goofy romance novels, but they honestly have so much heart in them, and they become so good even early on. But yeah, I'm not really ashamed of having read them. Mars and all them, my friends have all read them because of me. Not the whole series. I went through the whole thing, but read the early ones for sure. Have you read the Descender comic? I haven't. And the Tea of Piglet, that's got to be related to the Tao of Pooh, because I have that one. It was my uncle's. I'll have to add both those to my list. Let's see what else I have here. I'm going to mention Carry On by Rainbow Rowell, which I know I've talked about before, because the sequel comes out this year. I'm so excited. If you ever read Harry Potter and was like, where are all the gay kids? They're here. It's very much her take on sort of that concept, because it has an interesting origin. She wrote a book called Fangirl, and Fangirl was about a young woman who is involved in fandom, and her growing up and her life, and the fandom she was involved in was very much another fictional take on Harry Potter. It was sort of not a parody, but like obviously referencing Harry Potter. And the book got popular, and then the author kind of got the idea, well, what if I wrote the Harry Potter story I came up with? And that's Carry On. And it's actually a gay romance, and I did not know that when I picked it up. I picked it up because the artist is Kevin Wada, who's also a comic book artist and draws amazing things, and I loved the cover. And then I read it, and I cried. First, I'd been so taken aback by the fact that the main character was actually gay. It's very emotional when you grow up without that, Especially Harry Potter was such a big part of so many children's lives. And I remember being in high school with my friends and all of us, kind of wondering, wow, we wouldn't be at Hogwarts. It didn't feel like we were there. Like at our high school, there was a GSA. We were coming up with our own prom. We were making our own lives at that school, and it didn't exist in Hogwarts. And so it was really nice to kind of see myself in this book. And I'm so excited for the sequel. And the author is very cool. She's a very good author. I would definitely look her up. Favorite Transformers comic? Don't suppress the question, Handsome Ratch. You're the only person I have to talk to about Transformers comics, so please ask all the questions you want. My favorite is definitely two. I have two. Definitely love More Than Meets the Eye. It's just such a fun writing, such great characters, and I really love what they do with Megatron, who is my favorite character in the whole universe, and seeing him trying to understand where he went wrong by, completely changing his lifestyle, it's heartbreaking. The story is so well written. And also my other favorite story is Megatron Origins, which is also about him and about how he became who he is. I really love a lot of the comics in that universe, but those two are definitely my favorite. They blow it out of the park. Whew, my voice is getting hoarse. Alright, last one. The 100,000 Kingdoms by N.K. Jemisin, who's one of my favorite authors. The trilogy here is a really cool fantasy story, once again about gods and romance. It's kind of hard to explain. The beginning of the story is a young woman from the north finds out her mother had an affair with some royal figure back in the big royal city, and that's how she was born. And so this royal king has died, and now she technically is one of the possible heirs to the throne. So now she's having to leave her small rural village where she is a dark-skinned person and sort of used to hunting and kind of more of a wild life. Now she has to go to the city and sort of be the pretty princess and fight with her white cousins over who's going to be the crowned the queen. And she doesn't really want it, but she wants to know about her family. And so it's a lot of complex feelings. And also there's this mystic magic thing going on where there are these godlike creatures that live in the castle and take an interest in her. And it's such a good story. The sequel is very good too, but I can't talk about it because spoilers. And I haven't read the third one yet, but they're a very good trilogy. All her books are really good, but I'm very partial to this series. It just has a lot of themes I really like. So that is books that I read. I mean, I could keep going for probably a very long time, but my throat hurts and I need coffee. And if I am going to stream tonight, I definitely need to stop and have coffee. Any last minute questions, throw those in, and let me see here. I can think if I have things to say. I don't really have any new announcements right now. I'm still working on the next book of the Silent Hill series. It's really dumb that I freaking wrote Silent Hill 2's book first, and now I'm going back and writing Silent Hill 1. I should have done them all in order, but oops. And I guess Silent Hill 4 is going to be next because Mars just finished that cover and it looks gorgeous. I'm so excited. I'll probably post it on Twitter. Since when does coffee make your throat feel better? It's warm. It's warm. It soothes the throat. I'm addicted to coffee, okay? You'll never take it. Take it from my dead, cold, caffeineless hands. Yeah, I'm very excited about the books. Silent Hill 1 probably come out by the end of May. Silent Hill 4 probably, I'm hoping July. I'm planning on trying to do Silent Hill 3 in August because that's the month my father died. And I think, it'd be a good time to kind of get those emotions off my chest. So doing the series in a completely random order then. Yes, I already had the thought that I was writing this series like they made the Devil May Cry series, where Devil May Cry's timeline order is like 3, 1, 2, 5, 4 or something like that. Or now they've changed it because the new one, they've changed the timeline again. Anyway, what kind of coffee do I like? Dark like my soul. I drink 4 or 5 a day. It's probably very bad. Can I write an essay on why Silent Hill 4 is the best Silent Hill game? I feel like my channel is that essay, because I talk about it all the time. I'm glad you liked the Claudia video. I was nervous about doing that one just because, I don't know, Silent Hill 3 gives me mixed feelings. It's very hard for me to think about it and write about it just because it is so heavily about the father-daughter relationship, and that's still very sore for me. I mean, even 5 years out, it's just hard to adapt to. I think kind of in a similar way to Heather, sometimes you lose someone when you're that young, it becomes just very sore. I mean, it's hard whatever age you are, but I think my older siblings adapted easier than I did, just because they were like 35, 36 and kind of had an adult relationship with him, and I feel like I lost that. I never really got to have that, and Heather didn't either. But yeah, I'm hoping to have the first 4 out this year, because I have the research done for those. And the other games I haven't finished, and I don't know if they'll have as much. I'm not saying that because they're less games, not as good games, whatever. I think I could write a freaking novel on Downpour, but the old games just had a lot more, I think, research and time put into them because Konami allowed it. And even then, Konami took time away from 3 and 4. Anyway, yeah, so I guess we're going to close it off there, and thank you all for joining me. This is going to be what I do for the blogs from now on, is just live every week. I don't know what themes I'll do every week. A couple of themes I was thinking of is vampire lore, romantic literature, which I've been talking about in the Devil May Cry stuff. I really love that stuff. I don't know, favorite games. You guys can recommend themes too if you want, and maybe I'll put a poll up or something somewhere. But yeah, so that has been the chat about books that I am too addicted to and I love. And hopefully I will see y'all next week. Bye!